Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, aka the Cover 3 tailgate. And you see those sirens in your feed. You know exactly what that means. And look, Ryan in the tailgate, I get it. I had to hastily put together this headline. I did not include Bill O'Brien in the headline. So yes, this is technically sirens for both Chip Kelly and Bill O'Brien. But yes, Chip Kelly is going to be the second piece of this, is actually the first piece of this. So Bud, as we now are getting the news, and it is currently 2:34 p.m. Eastern time on Friday afternoon, the reports are coming from Bruce Feldman. They are from Pete Thamel. We are just at expected. So I at least want to say this, but as you and I have often had to do in these, sirens in your feed moments, we are going to operate and have the rest of this discussion with the assumption that nothing's going to fall apart and that Chip Kelly is going to be the Bill O'Brien replacement in Columbus, which brings Chip Kelly back with Ryan Day, his old quarterback from New Hampshire. But also, and the other piece of this is very important too, is a sitting Big Ten head coach leaving his post to go be an offensive coordinator for a conference foe. So let's start about the Chip Kelly to Ohio State side of this. How do you think that this is an upgrade? You went from Bill O'Brien to Chip Kelly.
I do. Maybe not an enormous upgrade. There's a lot of people in the industry who have the coaching industry who have a lot of respect for what Bill O'Brien's done. They like Bill O'Brien's passing concepts and his work with quarterbacks. You know, he did a good job at Penn State. I think overall, a pretty damn good job coaching the Texans. Now, GM-wise, probably not. So, and with Alabama, Bryce Young was the number one pick, so he didn't screw that up, at least. But yeah, I think you could argue that it could be a bit of a coaching upgrade from the aspect that Ohio State might want to be, kind of featuring a little more quarterback mobility in its offense now, and certainly Chip Kelly.
I know
Chip Patterson knows a heck of a lot too about quarterback mobility, but I think you could argue that it's an upgrade. It's really interesting. Like, you got a pretty quirky guy who literally is just just wants to coach ball, doesn't want to do, the personnel and the management side of it, and he's made a ton of money in his career, and now he gets to go just basically coordinate. And I'm not saying he won't have to recruit at UCLA or at Ohio State, but there are certain things he would do at UCLA he doesn't have to do now.
Oh, well, okay. Yes. Let's go ahead and go there then. I think this is Chip Kelly restarting the clock. So what did we know about Chip Kelly? We knew that the way the season ended, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like Bill Plaschke and the other prominent voices in Los Angeles were like, guys, this is done. And then we were met with all this information about the specifics of the Chip Kelly buyout, why a move wouldn't be made potentially at a certain time. And what happens after that? He loses his star quarterback recruit to Oregon. And he also loses his star defensive coordinator to USC. UCLA was going to be heading into a season in 2024 where Chip Kelly was under real job pressure. And I do not see the tools for the kind of season that relieves that job pressure with UCLA's current roster. So Chip Kelly, whether it was going to be the Seahawks offensive coordinator, whether it was going to be the Raiders offensive coordinator, the Commanders offensive coordinator, any of those, I was going to say restart the clock type motivations. But in Ohio State, it's just more notable because it's like, okay, you're staying not only in college, but at what we perceive to be the same level there in the Super 2. I'm glad you mentioned Chip Kelly. Let's think about him just as an offensive coordinator. He had at Oregon, just to take it all the way back to his sort of DNA, since that'll be a lot of the story, versatile rushing attacks, right? And use a couple different backs, use them different ways, keep a defense on their heels with that versatility because they never know exactly where it's coming from. And in doing that, you were able to, with Oregon, give your offensive line a chance to have be a step ahead of the defense. And when I look at everything for Ohio State's personnel in 2024, my only question mark, and it's not a big one, but if I'm nitpicking, it is the offensive line. So we have a deep and talented running back room, which is you already bringing Travion Henderson back. You got Quinshon Judkins back, and you have Emeka Egbuka back. You've got the super talented, whether it's Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate, pick your poison right there. You got a quarterback with a little bit of move to him. So now we're able to take the one thing that I actually had a question mark about, and again, not a big one, offensive line. If you're able to build an offense around this versatile rushing attack, something that Chip Kelly has done before, I like that a lot. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I might say upgrade, but it's not because I'm down on Bill O'Brien. I just can imagine what that's going to look like with this 24 Buckeyes team.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for Ohio State if a guy like Chip Kelly is available. And I mean, what luck for Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
We lose Bill O'Brien, and they just happen to have Chip Kelly. Cool. Like that's a stroke of luck for Ohio State. It really does suck for the folks in the building at UCLA, though, right? Like Chip Kelly's got a ton of money, but those folks who move their families out there to go coach there or to go work in administration, like that sucks, man.
Yes.
This late in the cycle, a lot of jobs are filled.
So finding a future for UCLA is definitely a big part of this. What do you want to go ahead and take it there? I mean, because I do like with the limited time that we have here, I do want to also hit on Bill O'Brien to Boston College. We talked about it a lot through the week just because it seemed like it was headed in that direction, but I want to make sure we give it a mention since we are going live here with the Sirens in their feed. So what does UCLA do now?
So I think we need to separate like what the UCLA job is in terms of what would an average, effort, enthusiasm level coach, what would he complain about UCLA versus like what Chip Kelly would complain about, right? So like I think Chip Kelly left because he doesn't like the transfer portal. Okay. He doesn't like having to deal. Clearly he thinks athletes should be compensated. He said so, but he doesn't like, I think, having to, shake down donors for donations to NIL and to go out there and politic and campaign. That's a lot of work. Right. I don't think Chip Kelly wants to deal with all that stuff. You kind of have to do that at every job as a head coach. So I don't know, how many complaints that Chip Kelly had are going to be carryover complaints, right, from other guys if they take that job. But I also know like Chip Kelly clashed with the administration a ton. Is that all Chip Kelly, or does that also say something about UCLA's administration? Right? Who knows? As far as replacements, I have not seen a hot board for this yet. I haven't even had a chance to text any agents, be like, okay, who are you guys trying to place in this? Like who's getting feelers out for this? I mean, does Jed Fish feel
No,
but I'm saying like, does he feel, I don't want to say dumb, but regretful? Like, would you rather have UCLA or Washington?
Washington, unquestionably.
Unquestionably.
Yeah. I think I've bought in.
Okay.
There is a community in Seattle of Washington grads of means who will buy season tickets, who will go to games when the team is running hot. I think Washington's ceiling is higher than UCLA's ceiling. And I think that before he left, while Kalen DeBoer, we don't imagine him as this like great fundraiser, I think he did a lot to be able to at least get it rolling with the Big Ten move on the horizon. He didn't know Alabama was going to come calling. He thought that he was going to be there a good while longer. And so I do think the infrastructure for such things. I mean, I know that this isn't like your purview right now, but Mick Cronin, I believe to be one of the better college basketball coaches, just in terms of like, X's and O's, going out there, coaching them up, getting your team ready to play. And he has been complaining all season as UCLA has stunk about how they don't have any money. They don't have any money to go get players. And if that's happening at men's basketball at a place like UCLA, then I think it's tough to be able to get that support. So if I'm Jed Fish, I would rather be at Washington.
I would rather be at Washington as well. I think instead of the word unquestionably, I would probably use, arguably, right? I think you can make a case, but yeah, I certainly get that. Bruin Report Online, which does a tremendous job covering UCLA and is like the UCLA spot for a long time. Their hot board is up.
Nice.
I think they knew this was coming. Tom Herman, David Shaw, which I've actually heard some people saying for a couple days now, which would be very interesting. I just don't know if I really believe that. Matt Campbell, Tony White, the D coordinator at Nebraska, which would make a lot of sense. So, that I think he's pretty pretty damn good football coach. Justin Wilcox at Cal, who does a really good job if you understand the limitations of Cal, but it's not a sexy track record if you don't consider the limitations of Cal. Brian Hartline, PJ Fleck, Barry Odom, D'Anton Lynn, who was the DC and is now the DC at USC. Jason Candle, and Jason Candle's on like every single list for all time, I guess. That's a pretty good list of candidates for a job, right? UCLA is not a top 20 job, but it's a top 35 job.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I do agree that that's a good list, especially if you're trying to think about the future. When I was talking about being down on the roster, where that program was after a couple of underachieving seasons, those last couple of years, or at least this year, definitely fell short of my expectations with the way they finished the season. If D'Anton Lynn comes and takes the job, then you kind of move forward without having too much friction, right? Just because the defense was the best part of that team last year, he's able to take over. And even if it takes you a couple years and a couple cycles to be able to, get that roster talent-wise back into a position where you might have a real shot at it, at least even though he wasn't there long, at least he's been there. And that would be something that doesn't cause too much disruption, except to your rival, who would now have to go, I guess, promote one of their other superstar defensive staff additions.
Completely agree. Also, like who you hire, everybody needs NIL to a certain extent to get players, but I think it's important to match up the type of coach you have with your recruiting resources. If you really don't have any money, then you need to probably get another guy who's like, okay, good charisma to recruit, but understands like we're probably not going to win some of these superstar battles if we really don't have anything. Like you can win superstar battles without being the highest bidder, as long as you're somewhat in the ballpark. If you're getting blown away, that's not going to happen. But a guy that does a good job with scheme, can recruit Southern California, those are important factors, I think, for me. Their schedule is pretty tough, I believe, to start the year. I mean, that's 2024. All right, that's men's basketball schedule. Hey, found football. All right, here we go. At Hawaii, host Indiana, at LSU, Oregon, at Penn State, Minnesota, at Rutgers, off week, at Nebraska, host Iowa, at Washington, host USC, host Fresno.
It's not bad.
You don't get Michigan and you don't get Ohio State.
Yeah.
Which is notable. But, I mean, LSU, Penn State, Oregon.
Penn State and Oregon were the ones that jumped out at me.
Also, you're asking, at Rutgers is not a gimme. Like, you need to play decently well for a cross-country trip to feel good about that. Like, you'll probably be favored.
Right.
But Rutgers brings a lot back. So I've just been kind of diving into some stuff. That's not going to be a game where you're favored by like 14. There are not a lot of gimmies on the schedule, I guess is my point. So, we'll see what happens there, man. It's transfer portal wise, their kids are eligible. Good luck getting into school right now, unless you find a place that's on the quarter system. There's a couple guys on the roster I think some schools would be interested in, but it wouldn't surprise me to see if they don't jump until the spring.
Gotcha. All right. Coming up on the other side, more about UCLA's future moving forward. Ohio State gets Chip Kelly. And yes, the reason why Chip Kelly is leaving his job as a head coach at UCLA to go be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State, well, that's because Bill O'Brien left after being hired to now be the next head coach at Boston College. We'll get into the Eagles hire as well next.
The madness doesn't just happen.
Y'all get ready!
And although it's marked on our calendars each year, it's built by moments of mayhem before.
And the crowd goes crazy!
And it begins to bubble long before it bursts. Sure, madness and March may go hand in hand, but it starts right here.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, you see those sirens in your feed. You know what that means. It is, and I should have said it at the beginning, I'm so sorry to you, to everyone that I did this. I'm really sorry. This is everyone continues to remind me that when I declared the coaching carousel over with Sharon Moore's promotion, I set in motion what I guess is just going to be a never-ending carousel. Just between now, it'll bleed right into the 2024 season. We've had 2 Power 5 openings since then. Jeff Hafley leaves his job at Boston College to go be the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And now Chip Kelly leaves his post as head coach of UCLA to go be the offensive coordinator, a coordinator for a pro team as well. Just the pro team that's in Columbus. $13 million. All right. So who on UCLA's roster should we be looking at, as now there is a 30-day window where they could transfer without penalty? However, as you just mentioned, based on the academics of all this, it might be more of a flurry of activity around the Bruins in the spring window. Without a doubt, something that their next hire is going to have to work really, really hard on over the next couple of months to be able to lock that roster down.
I mean, I don't hate Garbers, honestly, right? Like he played fairly well for them in the bowl game. Sturdivant, I think, is a guy who still has eligibility and still has some ability. Now, their quarterback situation was pretty lacking this year. I believe they lose a couple of the offensive linemen, but they're still decent dudes. Jay Toya on the defensive line is a guy that I think schools would be interested in. Those are some names that I think that schools would probably circle, but more for the spring period, I would think, most likely, unless you can get them in, which would be interesting.
That'd be a tough transition for the person. I mean, sometimes when we're doing this like offseason personnel stuff, and like I'm glad you highlighted, for example, UCLA's like staff, the assistant coaches who are there, who are getting ready for spring practice, the support staff that's been grinding on roster construction. Like, their lives are turned upside down right now. They're hoping they still have a job. Like this
Right.
it's a really, really difficult time for them. It's also difficult for the players. Like if now all of a sudden I've got to decide whether I'm going to up and leave. I might already be going with classes right now. I might have already had all these things set in motion. So, as much as we do acknowledge the transactional nature of this, especially in the modern era, I'm glad we're able to highlight the human part of that as well. I would not expect a ton of activity until after spring practice. Or do you think players are going to sit out spring practice knowing that they're about to transfer?
I don't know. I guess they could. I haven't really thought about that, but
I literally just thought about it while I was talking, which is why
you probably want to play, but I don't know. UCLA just put out a release on his departure, and the announced today that he is departing UCLA after 6 seasons. They thanked Chip for his time. And then they said, it's imperative we support our student athletes and put them in the best positions to succeed, said Martin Jarman, the AD at UCLA. UCLA is a special place, and we are confident we will find a leader for our football program who develops young men on and off the field and embodies our true Bruin values. Wasn't Jarman the AD at BC?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think Jeff Hafley might have been an assistant for Chip Kelly in the NFL.
Yeah. Are there any obvious connections that he has to people?
He also came from Ohio State
and Michigan State before that.
Yeah. So
D'Antonio, he would have been at Michigan State when Narduzzi was the DC for at least part of the time, right? 03 to 09.
Would you leave Pitt for UCLA right now?
Would I leave Pitt for UCLA? Yes, because I think it's a restart the clock move. I mean, I'm going to see Narduzzi in about 2 hours and 10 minutes. That's why we had kind of a tight timeline to get this thing, because he's at the Nike clinic down here in Orlando. But I don't think he's in any real danger. But if you just had a bad season, and he did.
But it was like his first bad season in a run of like 5 or 6 years.
Football fans are fickle, man. And like we talk about, ADs, even if you don't really think you can do better, and I don't think that Pitt can do better than what Pat Narduzzi has done at Pitt. You're only one bad season away from, so you restart the clock. But I don't know, like, how LA does Pat Narduzzi feel to you?
Not
particularly LA.
No, not at all. That's
anybody who was at Ohio State. I mean, Vrabel, but that UCLA feels way too small for him to take, unless I'm missing something there.
The more that we're sitting here, and again, we are just literally talking.
Tom Herman one makes a lot of sense because of this.
Tom Herman, Ohio State.
It's the Urban Meyer tree, right? Jarman would have been there when Urban got hired. He also did he hire Narduzzi at Boston? Did he hire Adazio at Boston College, or did he just fire him?
I would expect that he inherited, because I didn't think his time there was that extensive.
2017 was the first one. Okay, I'm just trying to remember the timeline here, because obviously Adazio is off the urban tree.
Hey, you know how also this is how
Yeah, he
broken my
inherited him.
this is how broken my brain is. I know that Steve Adazio was at Boston College before that because of Vine, and I was like, when was Vine?
Oh, right.
You
Dudes.
know,
Yeah.
dudes, yeah,
Fine.
just
yeah, so
guys being dudes.
I don't know. That's do you see Dion being considered? The chat is saying some Dion. I don't really I don't think so.
No, I don't. I wouldn't do that.
Dion brings his own NIL though.
I would.
He's got NIL problems.
I mean, I would just like there's
Call him and see what he wants to do. I mean,
oh yeah, sure. Again, I'm just stuck here on Danton Lynn. It's just like, how do you preserve continuity? How do you preserve the roster? How do you knife USC in the back a little bit too? You know, like
do you want to preserve continuity if you were unhappy with the product? Like, do we need continuity of a product with which we were unhappy?
But it wasn't the defense. The defense was awesome.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like there were guys on that defense that were not superstar prospects or guys that had like flashed a lot early in their career. There were a lot of like 3-4 year guys that were starting to play at an all conference, not an all American, but like at an all conference kind of level. So
would you be unhappy with David Shaw?
No. I would expect that you're going to fire him in 4 years, but I think that's a stability move just so that you've got an adult, right? Well, not that Chip Kelly wasn't, but it's like, this is a awful situation in terms of trying to get a program organized and ready to go. And he was around the team in the building. Isn't his son on the team or something like that?
So yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of David Shaw talk from people that I'm not sure would know, but the fact that they were coming to me with the name before any kind of hot boards were out there suggests that maybe there has been some rumor of this. I'm unsure what to think about David Shaw. So if you look at his track record, 11-2, 12-2, 11-3, 8-5, 12-2, 10-3, 9-5, 9-4. That's a really good track record up until the year that the early signing period came on, which was 2018.
But that's a Stanford thing. I can't.
Yes, correct. That's what I'm saying.
Shaw. Yeah.
Like I don't really fault David Shaw entirely for the downfall of Stanford. Okay, Stanford was very slow to adjust administratively to the advent of the early signing period. They were often not offering kids admission until like in January, which was after their signing period. They, I believe, don't allow early enrollees. So that also turns a lot of good players off, especially good academic players who are like, oh, I'm done with my classes for high school. I graduated semester early so I can go join spring practice. Now, the like outright refusal to make changes on the coaching staff, I think probably is his fault. And a lot of guys go through this. You see it. So that is a David Shaw problem, but it is not a problem that is solely a David Shaw problem, right?
Yeah, I also get to a place where
like Jimbo, I was like, get Jimbo the heck out of Tallahassee because none of these other guys on his staff are going to get good jobs. And in fact, none of them coached D1 the next year that he didn't take. Like all the guys he left, which was like 6 guys. I'm just going back. So it's not just David Shaw that keeps guys well past their prime or refuses to make a move because you're friends with them. But man, David Shaw doesn't get me fired up. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what he can do.
Well, it's I can't. One of my biases is just trying to predict where this ends, as much as it is trying to like give advice or think that I know the best. And somebody in the tailgate just said it, and I definitely agree. David Shaw is the type of candidate that like the UC Board of Regents is going to love, you know, like or like anybody who is they're going to love the leaning into the student athlete experience. UCLA is
there is some of that there. Like you have to go to class.
Yeah, there's an athletic department there that still cares about winning national championships in everything and bragging about competing for national championships in everything. It's not just the football and the club sports. I mean, they really like hold them all up. And so I could see that David Shaw's background at Stanford would make he would know how to move about those rooms and know how to make everybody at the athletic department, play push those right buttons, maybe in a way that Chip Kelly wasn't.
Ryan, one of our super commenters in the chat, suggested Tommy Reese, and I don't hate that either, honestly. If you want to go coordinator and you don't want to go Len, because he has been at a school. We got to come up with the term. It's better than academic school, because all schools are technically academic. But he was with the Irish, so he has dealt with guys who like do go to class, and there is.
Well, that's yeah. I feel like you say that sometimes, and that's like your tagline. It's like, no,
that's an academic school. Yeah, I'm trying in my head to come up with a new term, because every school is an academic school in some way, but some more than others, I guess.
I would say, what do we call that? That's more of a attendance suggested school, like.
Yeah.
All right. Any other sort of final thoughts on this? Again, UCLA,
Boston College getting BOB.
Yeah, I want to take us there. So Boston College introduces Bill O'Brien as its next head coach. That's what set all of this in motion. Your thoughts now that the move is final?
I don't hate it. I thought of the candidates that I saw suggested, it made a lot of sense. I am not real convinced that you can do a better job than Jeff Hafley did at Boston College, but I'm not convinced. I think it's possible. Maybe you're like a win better, I guess, but you need to be realistic. I'm pulling up their football season list here because I found it pretty instructive when I looked at this earlier.
Oh, the list of Boston College football. I mean, your peak is 8 flash for a 9. I mean,
so in 2007, 2008, you had like Miami was coached by Randy Shannon, so that was a disaster. Okay, you had Jimbo's first season as a coordinator, so you're just coming off the Jeff Bowden stuff.
Clemson
was a mess. What was North Carolina in 07?
07 is year 1 of Butch, or year 2 of like good recruiting class, but the team on the field wasn't there yet.
So that's basically their peak, right? They're in the league, and I was running an FSU blog back in like 06, and I remember thinking like, okay, like these Boston College fans talk a lot of smack. Their results here are much more correlated to what the teams that should be winning the league, if they're operating at peak efficiency, are not doing than what Boston College is doing. Like, yes, those BC teams were good. You had Matt Ryan, okay, who was probably or definitely a Hall of Famer in the NFL, I think. You had Mark Helfrich and Luke Kuechly and some guys, not all on the same team necessarily. But they went 9-3, 9-3, 10-3, 11-3, 9-5 in their first 4 years in the ACC. And then the rest of the ACC kind of woke up.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, their high water mark is
8. And
in conference, 5 wins.
Yeah, 5-3.
They've done it twice. Hafley did it once, and also the Frank Spaziani when he inherited the Tom O'Brien team. So for the most part, Boston College should expect to have a losing record in conference, and 4-4 in conference, in my opinion, should be considered a really good record. They almost won 7-20, but they had a COVID game canceled on them. And that was a team, I thought that was going to be a pretty good team. And they had to follow like real COVID rules where some schools didn't. So I don't know. Like, to me, we cut that video. It's my pinned tweet on my Twitter, BudElliott3. Sometimes you fire a guy, not because you think you can truly do better, but because the fans won't keep buying tickets if you keep bumping up against your ceiling. You have to lie to them. You got to tell them there's a reason for hope that we can be a lot better. Do I think Boston College can be a lot better than making bowls? No, I don't. Not in this current configuration of the league, but you could tell me that the Hafley product was kind of stale, and I'd buy that.
Boston native,
depressing, but I don't know.
No. Like I think that Bill O'Brien is.
What's the case that they could be like they contend for the league?
I just don't think that that's an important conversation around Boston College. Boston College isn't on Bud Elliott's group of 18.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is you've got a group of 18, and on that group of 18, they are spread out across 3 conferences.
Yep.
Right? So if you're not on that list of 18, why are we even talking about you? Like, right. Okay, you're going to be winning the conference. Like, but do I believe that Bill O'Brien is a really good hire who can keep that team competitive? Because that's what you really want more than anything in a place like Boston College is competitiveness. I want to know the gap between our team and almost everybody on our schedule is going to be close enough that you're like, if we get these breaks, if this, that, or the other, we've got a shot. And I do believe that Bill O'Brien
shot at
winning a game. That's what I'm saying. Like you're doing like full season expectations. I think that you want to have a head coach because Boston College's floor is like a 2-10 season where you only win your non-conference games and you don't win a single game in conference play.
They do a good job of not scheduling like dumb stuff in the non-con. As a school, BC has done a better job than some of the other teams in the league of like not like they don't do the paycheck stuff nearly as much. So next year, Duquesne at Missouri, Michigan State, West Kentucky. That's a bad example, actually. That's probably
that was the reason why Jeff Hafley got out of town was because you went from not playing a power conference opponent when you did UConn, Army, Northern Illinois, Holy Cross in 2023 to trading out two of those for, let's just say, UConn and Army, trading them out for Michigan State and Missouri.
They have exciting games that are exciting relative to their talent level coming up. So at Cincinnati, Rutgers, Maine. Like Cincinnati and Rutgers are two games that if you're a Boston College fan, you're kind of fired up to go see because those are like reasonable similes to what your program is, right? Fordham, UMass at Michigan State, and then contractually you have the Notre Dame game because of the ACC. It's probably not worth reading a lot of this because I don't know how many of these games are going to be around in 3 or 4 years.
I know when they announced that every ACC championship the rest of the way was going to be in the state of North Carolina, I was like, oh man, is that really cynical?
Yeah, I'm like,
no. Hey, real talk. My opinion on this is not my knowledge. This is my opinion. That's more tied to the relocation of the office, and that like in the relocation of the office, I think that there was a little bit of a I don't know whether it was in writing or not, but it's like, hey, we're gonna relocate anywhere, and there's some like financial incentive for that, and it's like, okay, we'll put championships here. So
if I'm BC, I want to go. Like I think my goal as the AD to evaluate is 500 or better against Cal, Stanford, Wake, Duke, Cuse. Help me out here. Am I missing somebody?
Pitt.
UVA and Pitt.
Yeah. I mean, I just say even though Pitt is running hotter, that is your peer. You want to be right there.
You want to be similar to Pitt. I think
Yeah.
Pitt's a better program than Boston College, but it's not by a ton.
I think they cast a wider net from just sort of like the university itself.
Yeah. So, all right, that's 7 teams. Can you be in the second from bottom quartile in the ACC?
Yeah, I think and all this to say, I think Bill O'Brien can get there. And I think that Bill O'Brien, the great advantage, and I think I said this maybe earlier in the week, is he's not going to show up and be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh no. He's going to know exactly what they can do, the gap between them and the very top, and he's not going to immediately be overwhelmed with trying to accomplish that. So
Rox Hunter says, I have no idea what I'm talking about with BC. All right, let me know. Why should BC be materially better than that? What's BC's NIL budget? Like,
don't be upset.
No, I'm not. But I'm like are we missing this? Because there are only 2 of us. If we had 4, then if there's 4, we all agree. Typically, no. But I'm confused as to why people think like Boston College is better than that. They're a take the check, take the losses program.
My take on that is it does come back to there are programs that we are not talking about competing for championships right off the bat. Yeah. And then number 2 is like, okay, so what are you playing for? And that's where I've settled on competitiveness. That it cannot be an embarrassing, uncompetitive product on Saturdays, whether that's on television, whether that's in the stadium. Like that should not be acceptable. And so if you can deliver on that competitiveness, if you can win about as much as you lose against teams that are your peers and beat the teams that you should beat, which is also sometimes just as important, just as difficult for some of these coaches at these programs, then yeah, it's a good hire.
I mean, you look at this, they did get blown out a couple times in the last year, right? So they lost I mean, they were very competitive against FSU. They only lost by 2. Louisville beat. Now they did get crushed by Louisville. They lost by 29. They lost. The Hokies beat them by 26. I mean, they're competitive with Pitt. Miami beat them by 25. I don't. Is it reasonable to think you're going to go the season without a couple blowout losses? I don't think so.
I mean,
Most games being competitive, right? Like we talked about this. Was it UConn contract or the Rutgers contract? Like having incentives in there where, hey, if games are competitive into the third quarter, so people are staying in the seats, they're still buying concessions. They feel like they got their money's worth. It's nothing's worse than like a BC alum who they don't all live in BC, flying in for a game. They're like, well, damn it, man. Like, it's cool. I got to go back. But like, we're down 3 touchdowns at half. That sucks. So I don't know. Maybe I'm too cynical on this.
One last thing before we get out of here, because I know you got to go try to catch up with Pat Narduzzi and, stick a phone in his face and say, hey, Pat, are you a candidate for UCLA?
Oh my gosh. I will.
I don't know if he would like that. What? Like he would just look at you.
Like, really? Okay.
So I was thinking about the Chip Kelly side of this because one of the questions from the tailgate earlier was, how long do you see Chip Kelly at Ohio State? Chip Kelly is very smart and probably knows his path to the NFL, a path that he pursued this offseason, interviewing for offensive coordinator jobs. His path to the NFL is easier as Ohio State's offensive coordinator than it is as UCLA's head coach in 2024.
Really? Yeah.
I think he clearly wants to get back to the NFL. I think he has a better chance of doing it as the, whatever happens with these Monstars. Oh, that's the other thing. This adds to the rock star quality of the 2024 Ohio State Buckeyes.
No doubt. I think Ryan Day is a really, really bright mind.
But like, it's just Chip Kelly and all these NIL driven portal editions and all of that just sort of rock star world tour juggernaut quality in the wake of Michigan winning the national championship. It's awesome. It's a great season for narratives in the Big Ten.
The other thing I wanted to point out. So Justin Fry, who is Ohio State's offensive line coach, was Chip's O-line coach from basically, I think when he was hired to last year was his second year. So like 18 to 21.
Okay.
So there's another commonality there. Like Chip is going to be familiar with the offensive line stuff going on at Ohio State in terms of scheme, how they teach. The verbiage won't be a new thing to learn. It might be a new thing for Chip to learn what Ryan Day is doing. Kind of doubt it. But you at least have somebody else on staff who you coach with for multiple years and coach very closely with, who can pretty quickly translate it for you. So that's kind of solid, I like it.
MH5 in the Cover 3 tailgate says, so is it national championship or bust for Ohio State? And my answer is, isn't it always?
Yes, I think so. It's definitely win a playoff game or bust. How about that?
Like 2020, and that's the thing. You can't even count 2020 as a successful year. They only played 4 regular season games.
Yeah,
you didn't even get to ride the full train of beating Western Kentucky 63-10, or whatever ends up coming along the way. So yeah, I would say it almost always is national championship or bust for Ohio State, and the urgency, powered in part by these losses to Michigan and Michigan winning the title, have Ryan Day and this program absolutely loading up. Yeah. And that includes former NFL head coach as offensive coordinator. He leaves, replace him with another former NFL head coach. It just so happens he's the sitting head coach at one of your new conference foes. So UCLA search begins. Ohio State, even a bigger headline as we head into 2024.
One thing I am seeing on some message board stuff here. Do we think Martin Jarman erred in not firing Chip after the season? Because now you're in a more difficult spot in some ways.
Yes,
but also you protect your roster if you wait this long, because guys don't have spots to go for the most part.
That's true. I think you have
And the new guy gets like 18 weeks to talk to him, assuming you can run a search. Like, are there candidates out there who you would have gotten who took lesser jobs than you because you waited?
I think there are potentially coaches in the Big 12 and the ACC who would have thought in December about taking a UCLA job with the idea that you're leading them into the Big 10, this, that, or the other. You're seeing this is before we ever knew about the STAB, the Super 2 advisory board, but like this is coaches know. I mean, they see the direction that these things are going. And I think that there are coaches who have already gotten their plans together for spring. And at this point, they're like, yeah, they're not gonna treat it the same as if they had gotten the same call 2 months earlier.
I think that's fair.
I mean, what if you'd fired them in mid-November when they were calling for it?
Right.
We'll see. Anyway, we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. We appreciate you hanging out, and you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Bud, thank you very much.
See you, buddy.